So, Super Nintendo World is coming to various Universal parks, and is already opened at Universal Studios Japan. A smaller version of the lands will open at Universal Hollywood in 2023, which will then be followed by the full thing at Epic Universe in 2025. I'm sure that you're aware that it will open with a Mario Kart e-ticket, supplemented with a Yoshi ride that moves throughout the land. These are of course its basic selling points, as Mario and Friends are popular with kids, and the IP itself has a pretty strong multi-generational draw. I have no doubts that it'll be popular with consumers in the same way that the Wizarding World currently is. However, I get the impression that people don't really fully understand what they're going to be getting into. I've seen a lot of criticism for the Mario Kart attraction, but there seems to be a fundamental misunderstanding of what it is and what it's attempting to do. The same applies with the Yoshi ride as well. Furthermore, people seem to not understand that the land itself isn't just aesthetically pleasing, but is interactive in a revolutionary way. In fact, I would even make the claim that it makes the wand magic seem outdated because it just goes so much farther in what it's trying to achieve. I've seen Super Nintendo World covered at a pretty superficial level, so instead I would really like to dig into its design choices, countering a lot of the criticism that it has received. I'm also interested in breaking down the different elements of the attractions as well as the land itself, really illuminating how and why this is going to set a new standard within theme parks. If you haven't been paying attention to what's being offered here, then I think you're going to be in for a big surprise. Visitors will enter Super Nintendo World through a warp pipe, and from there transition to Peach's castle. While I do wish it was bigger, the iconic castle music from Super Mario 64 plays inside, and these lenticular portraits change depending on where you stand. Upon exiting the castle, you will be met with the Mushroom Kingdom itself, which, while relatively small, can tend to be visually overwhelming. This, in conjunction with the land being multi-layered, makes it feel much larger than it actually is. One element that absolutely blows me away is the kineticism of everything, ranging from the movement of the Yoshi ride to the creatures like Koopa Troopas and Piranha Plants. It's also important to notice that while visually overstimulating, the area is divided into distinct sections, giving it a large degree of aesthetic variety. Going left to right, you have hills, a snow area, Bowser's Castle, Mount's Beanpole, a forest past the Yoshi ride, and it circles back to more hills. There is also a desert area that can only be clearly seen when on Yoshi's Adventure. You may not initially realize it, but the design seems to want to blend everything together, yet still offer distinct visuals to help you find where you're going. As an example, the aesthetic of Bowser's Castle definitely stands out among the various biomes, and draws people towards it through curiosity. Inside is Mario Kart Koopa's Challenge, which will translate to Bowser's Challenge when it premieres in the United States. The queue itself takes you of course through the castle, first taking a stairway up to a statue of Bowser himself. Further inside, you'll also see various cups that represent their respective Mario Kart circuits. Appropriately, you'll be racing for the Universal Cup at this attraction. Continuing forward, the queue is littered with props related to racing, such as tires or barrels of Bowser oil. Another section of the queue portrays Bowser's planning space, where he makes his plans to sabotage the other racers. I think it should be noted that the queue itself is full of Easter eggs, referencing various Mario levels and enemies. Another section then turns into a factory, where Bowser's mechanical goons, such as bombs or bullet bills, are being manufactured. Pretty much everywhere you look, the queue is well detailed and full of recognizable elements to anyone who has played the games. Eventually, adjustable headpieces designed to represent Mario's hat as Team Mario are distributed, and guests will watch videos instructing them on how to wear it properly. It appears that cards are handed out with instructions for boarding the vehicle as well. Reaching the ride platform, riders are seated and then attach augmented reality or AR goggles to their headpiece, which will display characters and elements, selling the effect of racing through the ride. From here, the attraction itself is a combination of physical sets and animatronics, but is also pretty screen heavy as well, combining all of these elements together with what appears through the goggles. Augmented arrows will appear before riders, which will reward them with coins and a smoother experience for turning the steering wheels in unison with where they're supposed to go, though it doesn't actually affect the ride path itself. There are also triggers on the steering wheel, which will launch Koopa shells to hit enemies, which again will appear through the AR goggles, and coins are rewarded for successful hits. The ride course is about 5 minutes, taking you from the starting line through various racetracks. You'll start, of course, in Bowser's Castle, and emerge out into a hilly area of the Mushroom Kingdom. Traveling through a warp pipe, you'll then race through an underground zone inhabited by piranha plants and flooding with water. This will then transition to an underwater track, where you'll encounter various enemies. At the end of this portion, the ride vehicles spin around and transition to a haunted mansion, where they'll encounter boos and magic Koopas that the guests will have to fight off. Next, the vehicles take flight, being blown around in the clouds by typhoons. Bowser's airship will then show up as riders will have to fight off more enemies as they race Bowser alongside volcanoes. A lava Bowser then emerges, and once defeated, the vehicles absorb a superstar and are flung down to the Rainbow Road, where projection effects simulate flying down the track at high speed. The finish line is then crossed with Team Mario having won, and displaying the number of coins racked up by each individual driver. From here, the vehicles will return to the station. If this is your first time watching this, or even if you have seen it before, I suspect that you may think that the whole experience looks, well, kinda bad. In fact, it has gotten some pretty mixed impressions online. So, I would like to next address a lot of the criticism in depth, and explain why this ride is far better than it initially appears. I'm sure that you know that I enjoy writing and producing analytical breakdowns of theme park attractions, but a lot of time and effort goes into making these video essays. If you would like to support the channel, leaving a like on the video is an excellent way to help them reach a wider audience. Two common criticisms I've seen is that for a Mario Kart attraction, the vehicles are moving painfully slow, and that the AR effects look pretty bad. To address these concerns, let me first state that this is an attraction that you cannot judge just from video alone. Having made that statement, I'm sure that people are going to point out that I've done that myself, actually quite frequently throughout the videos I've made. However, it's one thing to judge Spider-Man Web Slingers for the content of its video screens, when it's the same ride system as Toy Story Midway Mania, which I was already familiar with. It's another thing to praise, say, Dream Flights at Efteling, when the quality of the theming very clearly comes through on video, leaving no doubt that the actual experience is even better in person. Essentially what I'm saying is that measured judgment must be used to know when it is and is not appropriate to criticize or praise an attraction just through video alone. I think that a lot of people who are saying that the AR looks bad are definitely jumping the gun, because this is something that could not possibly be conveyed effectively through a camera. First, both the perspective of the camera and its field of view are different than your eyes would be when wearing the goggles, which is what leads to a lot of the characters not appearing directly on the road or their assigned set pieces. For example, these Koopas up on Bowser's airship don't appear to be standing correctly just by looking through a camera at the left lens, but I'm absolutely sure that their placement is accurate in person. The second factor is that the characters look to be translucent, and while I don't know if that's intentional or not, I believe that they probably look solid from the perspective of your own eye. For example, the raptors chasing the train in the Velocicoaster queue look solid until you lean forward over the railing, in which your change in perspective makes them look translucent because you're viewing them at a distance that wasn't intended. Like them, the various characters in Mario Kart likely lose the same effect when viewed directly by the rider. Reportedly, the AR effect is well executed in person, which brings me to the second point about ride vehicle speed. Super Nintendo World is built with interactive gameplay in mind, which makes sense considering that Nintendo is a video game company. A lot of people are upset that the Mario Kart attraction isn't a high-speed roller coaster, but the interactive game elements clearly show that this was never the intention. When you think about it though, it makes sense. While Mario and Nintendo games are certainly multi-generational, the target demographic is still children who may be alienated with an otherwise thrilling attraction. The focus on Mario Kart is not speed, but rather simulating it and emphasizing the gameplay elements instead. I can also see another criticism arising from this, in that just turning the wheel and shooting Koopa shells is rather shallow, because it lacks the variety and the usable items that you would otherwise find in the games. However, I think I'm safe in saying that most people who experience this attraction will have never played Mario Kart a day in their lives. It needs to be accessible enough for people who have never played the games, yet still simulate the feeling of entering the game world yourself. I think that for the complex elements that are incorporated into making this a reality, the attraction does an exceptional job. So no, it's not a high-speed roller coaster because that idea would have never worked with what they were intending to do. After having defended the ride though, how good is it really? Well, I obviously can't say until I experience it myself, though I will say on just a technical level, it does look rather exceptional. AR on a moving ride vehicle must be incredibly difficult to do. And once blended with the actual physical elements of the ride track, the overall effect should blow you away just because of how technically complex it is. Judging from reviews of people who have actually been on it though, it does appear to be highly regarded. A common sentiment that I've heard is that it may not be particularly life-changing, but it is really well done if you keep your expectations for what it is in check. As long as you go into it recognizing that it was always about accessible gameplay and immersing riders into the world of Mario Kart, you're likely going to really enjoy what it has to offer. On the topic of gameplay, this is the fundamental element that defines Super Nintendo World. Instead of buying a wand like you would in Hogsmeade or Diagon Alley, here you can instead purchase a power-up band that represents different characters from the Mario franchise. This is going to include Mario, Luigi, Peach, Daisy, Toad, and Yoshi, and will probably sell for about $70 in the United States. These are used to interact with both Mario Kart and the land itself, and are connected to an app on your phone that tracks your progress. With the app, all of the coins you collect will accumulate, and stamps are earned from completing various tasks. Now, do you earn anything by collecting coins? Unfortunately not, but there is a daily leaderboard that allows you to compete against others, and the stamps will give completionists a reason to go find and interact with every single element that the land offers. Examples of these would be the slot machine, where matching the symbols will grant more coins, or interacting with the note blocks, running to hit them in order to play a song, and of course, gain coins as well. Activities like these are essentially found everywhere, even in attraction queues, and will also unlock unique stamps. Sometimes you'll hit a block and an 8-bit character will appear. other times hitting a unique block will play a certain sound, or occasionally, an interactive minigame will even trigger. The power-up band also plays a part in meet and greets, with Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Toad available to interact with. Except for Toad, the various characters will speak, and depending on the character represented by your band and what you've done in the land, the dialogue from the characters will change and give you a more personalized experience. Huh. Did you hear that, Disney? Just a quick side trip, but Canopio's Cafe, or Toad's Cafe as it will be known in the US, is a sit-down restaurant obviously themed to Toad. Up on the walls, screens will portray the various Toads getting into a series of antics, and occasionally Bowser will start to invade before being chased off by Mario. The food, at least in presentation, looks fantastic, and while much of it is catered to the tastes of a Japanese audience, I hope that many elements of this are brought over to the US. Of course, the power-up band works here too, allowing you to collect coins and probably a few stamps. The main reason to purchase the power-up band, though, is that it allows you to essentially work your way through various challenges with a pretty significant payoff. While many of the interactive elements only nab you coins and stamps, there is an overall experience that you can progress through. The premise is that Bowser Jr. is working to create mayhem throughout the Mushroom Kingdom, and the power-up band allows you to fight him in his own attraction. In order to do so, however, there are 5 challenges that award keys upon completion, and you need 3 of them to get into his lair. The first of these, which is also the easiest, simply requires quickly rotating a crank to topple over a Goomba. The second challenge has you trying to hit PAL blocks, carefully timing the chain reaction to send a Koopa shell up a warp pipe, and defeating the Koopa walking above. The third of these challenges is meant to be played with others, where players have to frantically run around hitting alarm clocks that will then put a piranha plant back to sleep if done successfully. The fourth challenge requires defeating a Thwomp, where inside of its lair, players must quickly turn all of the blue blocks yellow through an interactive touchscreen. The final and most challenging of these is the Bob-omb fight, where an exploding Bob-omb scatters the pieces of a key and players must work together to acquire them back. As the pieces are collected, a player in the middle must quickly assemble it back together, and if they fail, the Bob-omb again explodes, breaking it apart and resetting their progress. I will say that while some of these challenges are certainly more difficult than others, I think it's important to once again keep the key demographic in mind. Most people playing these games would probably find them more challenging than most video game players would, and so it needs to remain accessible, yet still manages to be dynamic with its varied difficulty levels. Despite the overall lack of difficulty though, each feels like a substantial task, where the key is truly earned by the player. However, once 3 keys are acquired, players can then enter Bowser Jr.'s lair, and challenge him to win back a golden mushroom stolen from Princess Peach. This game, titled the Bowser Jr. Shadow Showdown, incorporates your own shadow, requiring players to swipe and hit away enemies, all the while obtaining power-ups that will help in achieving this. While I haven't been able to deduce why the players are shadows, I believe that it somehow ties into Bowser Jr.'s Shadow Mario form, which makes the implementation of this technology rather clever in how it integrates players into the world building. Upon winning the game, Bowser Jr. is defeated and the wall collapses to reveal Mount Beanpole. The players then all jump up there in unison, acquiring the stolen golden mushroom. Overall, while the challenge progression in Super Nintendo World may not be particularly difficult, implementing interactive minigames into a physical space is actually quite revolutionary for a theme park. The wand magic in the Wizarding World has always been a gimmick with no consequences, essentially just working to help you discover novelty elements throughout these lands. Even so, it's fun and makes the world you're in feel more alive. However, to evolve this into games with an actual progression system, no matter how easy, is actually a pretty genius idea. Not only is that essential element of discovery and role-playing still there, but there is now a sense of purpose in working towards a goal. I think it's also worth mentioning that in the team-based games, there's a sense of frantic chaos that almost seems equivalent to playing a Mario Party minigame in real life. The only downside to this is that I wish there were actually more of these challenges scattered around. Still, Super Nintendo World continues to offer even more. So let's now explore the criminally underrated Yoshi ride. The queue for Yoshi's Adventure is located at the base of Mount Beanpole, and guests will first enter a yellow warp pipe. The queue itself reflects the aesthetic style of the Yoshi games, using pastel colors and embracing a calm atmosphere as iconic music from the games plays overhead. You will of course find elements such as the Yoshi eggs and smiley flowers among the hills and trees. Something that's important to point out is that in comparison to everything else, the queue does seem rather poorly themed. The often just painted walls feel like something out of the Cat in the Hat queue, and while not inherently bad, does fail to meet the standard found throughout the rest of the land. I'm not really sure why this is the case, though it does at least seem to reflect the sort of flat, crafty look that has come to define the Yoshi games. I'm not sure if that's intentional or not. Also take into account that because this will be a less popular attraction, because it is a constantly loading Omnimover, maybe Universal felt that it will rarely have a long queue, and so it wasn't worth spending the money on any extensive theming. Whatever the case, I do wish that more was done in here, even if I can justify the flat walls as reflecting the aesthetic of the games. There does come a point where you'll see a map showing the location of scattered eggs around the course, which will come into play later. Nearby, an interactive egg block will pop out different colored eggs, granting you a stamp for each one. The fruit baskets are also interactive, providing stamps as well. There does come a point in the queue where you encounter Toadette, who explains that you'll be traveling on a Yoshi to try and find the lost Captain Toad, who disappeared on an adventure to find a golden egg. Moving upstairs, you'll find yourself on the ride platform and stepping into one of the many multicolored Yoshis. Once seated, the ride first takes you outside, giving riders a great view of the land. To your left, you'll also get to look up and get a new perspective on Mount Beanpole. Traveling forward, riders can see a Pokey and a Koopa Paratroopa on their left as well. They will then move into the desert biome, and are met with a dangerous Cawkdor guarding an egg. If you press the corresponding egg buttons on the vehicle as you pass them in the ride, you'll be granted a sticker at the end. The riders then travel through a warp pipe, finding themselves in an indoor scene with Baby Mario and Baby Peach. Here, the blue egg is found as well. Traveling out of the warp pipe, riders find themselves back in the desert with another Pokey, and the red egg can be found nearby. This then transitions to a forest, and more Yoshis can be spotted engaging in various activities. I'm quite sure that while outside, these scenes can only be viewed from the actual ride. Here, you'll also successfully find Captain Toad and the golden egg. The ride then continues forward, encountering some piranha plants and a thwomp up close, before then re-entering Mount Beanpole, where riders will disembark. The largest issue with Yoshi's Adventure is that it could really use a lot more scenes. The ride itself is around 5 minutes, which is pretty long, but I feel that Universal could really improve the experience, at least with another indoor scene or two. That being said, I do think that the attraction is already underrated, as people have dismissed it as a slow-moving kids ride. While it is true that it's meant to appeal to younger children, especially as the egg collecting mechanic is laughably trivial, I appreciate a calm, scenic ride among the more thrilling experiences that Universal often offers. Its most apt comparison is probably the High in the Sky Seuss Trolley Train ride, which also offers a scenic exploration of Seuss Landing and Islands of Adventure. One element that appeals to me is the very scenes that can only be viewed from the ride itself, and while it too is also too short for my liking, I still find it to be, well, underrated. Like the Sky Trolley, Yoshi's Adventure offers great elevated views of the land, and offers scenes that can only be viewed from the ride, even including most of the outdoor portions. While not flawless, I do think that Yoshi's Adventure shouldn't be overlooked. It's disappointing to me that Super Nintendo World at Universal Hollywood will be opening without it, as the park doesn't have the room. And while this ride certainly isn't highly anticipated by anyone, I think it's still a great loss. Still, having now covered and broken down most of Super Nintendo World, I can't help but feel that it seems a bit incomplete? Let's address that next. If you watched my video where I covered how Epic Universe will change entertainment in Orlando, I did mention that this version of Super Nintendo World will open with a Donkey Kong portion as well. Currently, this is being built as an expansion in Japan, but will also unfortunately not be coming to Hollywood because of the space constraints. Even so, it appears to me that the Mario Kart attraction may not have been intended as the major e-ticket, and that the Donkey Kong area would have done that instead. From this leaked image of the model, it appears that there will be some sort of Donkey Kong themed coaster that will travel in and out of show buildings, likely simulating jumping the tracks as in Donkey Kong Country. I suspect that this area was always planned but was pulled back, as the name Super Nintendo World definitely implies more than just Mario or its adjacent Yoshi franchise. While there are yet any details on what the interactive elements of this land will be, I think it's safe to assume that the power-up bands will likely be used here as well. Now, will there be a sense of progression as with the Bowser Jr. boss fight? It's difficult to say, though Universal did announce that this area would expand Super Nintendo World by about 70%, which means that the area should be quite large and explorable, also including dining and retail as well. The details here are vague, but I have to admit that I'm excited to see what comes to fruition. I would also like to highlight that with Epic Universe specifically, an expansion plot will be located to the south of where the land is currently being built. Rumors as to what this could possibly be seem to most strongly indicate Pokemon or The Legend of Zelda, though I have to admit that I would actually prefer either an expansion of Mario, or perhaps even something that mashes a number of franchises like Metroid, Kirby, and even Ice Climbers together. Probably less likely to happen is something related to Mario Party, as the multiplayer challenges currently found throughout the land remind me quite heavily of those minigames. Regardless of what happens though, I think that Super Nintendo World as it exists is a game changer in a way that people don't necessarily realize. I think that people know it will be popular, but don't necessarily recognize how interesting Mario Kart will be once experienced in person, not to mention how the technology will continue to evolve in future attractions. Yoshi's Adventure may seem easy to dismiss, but it's the smaller scale, often relaxing rides that help flesh a park out. The interactivity of the power-up band also makes the wand magic look underwhelming in comparison, and I suspect that we're going to see this continue to evolve further, not just with Nintendo, but possibly other Universal projects as well. Regardless of how receptive you are to this land, what we cannot deny is that it will certainly be a boon, both in driving attendance at Universal Hollywood and acting as the largest draw for Epic Universe. If you enjoy video essays like these, I once again would like to ask you a favor to just hit the like button. Subscribing and hitting the bell icon is strongly recommended as well, so as to know when new videos are released.